been another weekend of marching band, and here we are on a Monday morning with our coffee talk. Welcome to everybody. Randy Greenwell and Richard Saucedo here. And today's topic is going to be electronics. The very controversial. Here we go. If you want to create drama, start talking about electronics. So Richard, talk to us.
Folks, this is coming from after, let's see, what was this? I think this was my 5th straight weekend of judging marching band, or being involved with the judging of marching band. And I still find that, especially when I'm on the music ensemble caption, that I constantly have to comment about the use of electronics. And there are 2 things that I talk about more than anything. Number 1 is when you are amplifying a soloist, have you spent the time that it takes to make sure that the soloist, and obviously if we put a soloist up there, they're pretty good, right? They're usually pretty good players. So if we put a soloist up there, are we hearing them at their best, or are we hearing them electronified? And I hope that makes sense. And I'll combine, I'll use these things to create electronified. Too much reverb, too much volume. All right, we'll just leave it at those 2 things for right now. Remember that the goal of amplification is to help those folks to sound their best, which means there should be an acoustic quality to the sound. All right, and if you over amplify folks, we lose that, and you may have your best player up there, and we lose the fact that they're your best player, because all we hear is the reverb. It sounds like they're not playing any phrases because everything sounds at the same volume. All right, so just really, really be careful of that. And the other thing that I'll mention real quickly, and I know that we're all sick of hearing this, but folks that are using a bass synth to kind of cap off the end of a phrase or something like that, you got to check that volume too, guys, because if we're hearing things without electronics and then all of a sudden we hear this at the end, I mean, as a judge, it's tough not to react to that and say, whoa, where did that come from? Or, that's too much. All right. So I guess, a couple sessions ago, Randy, we were talking about balance, and I guess in some ways everything comes back to balance. But with electronics, just make sure that you're trying to get as acoustic a setting as you can on the board, okay, for your soloists, and make sure that when you use the bass synth to kind of augment the end of a big moment, be careful that you don't overdo it.
Yeah, that's perfect information. And my rule for amplifying an instrument is that what does the student or the performer sound like in their natural acoustical environment? And when we amplify that sound, does it make them sound worse? Yeah. And in many instances, it possibly does. They're either too close to the mic or there's too much reverb, as you said. Yep. And I think from a standpoint of orchestration, I think the judging world has accepted the fact that electronics is a 4th voice in the orchestration.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But just like the winds and just like the percussion, if there's too much of anything and it's covering up the main thing, as you've mentioned before, which might be the melody or a texture, then it's too much. And so just simply treating it that way in our rehearsal settings is really, really important. There's times when that bass sound or the electronic sound, if that's the only thing going on, okay, let me feel it as an audience member, great. But don't, as a person who has, ADD, don't make me listen to that plus 3 other things you want me to hear, and expect there to be clarity, right, for my, or competitiveness for my ear to be able to pick up on what it is that you actually want us to hear. And I think that's kind of what we're saying, right?
Yep, that's exactly what we're saying.
Yeah. So it's really important. And, I want everybody to think about this. I know there are some circuits where the students are allowed to run the soundboard. Okay. There are other circuits that allow directors to run the soundboard. This is just a general philosophy for me. I would hate to be compromised in my performance because of something an adult does that isn't listening or doesn't know what's going on. So if there's not somebody up in the stands that's balancing, because we all know you got to be in the stands to be able to do that. So you're either running it from an iPad, or you're using a walkie-talkie or a phone to communicate with the person running the board, make sure you're preparing yourself for that during rehearsals during the week, because it's something the kids can't control, right? And I feel bad for the student performers if there's a situation where the adults can't take care of their situation and it ends up hurting the group in the long run. So something to really, really think about.
Yeah, and I learned this a long time ago, guys. You can't, and you all know this, but just a reminder, if you're down on the field during the performance, you cannot judge the balance of the electronics down there. Actually, you can't judge the balance of anything down there, especially if you're in an indoor stadium. So I like what Randy said about having someone up top that you trust, whose ears you trust, with an iPad, making adjustments as they hear they need to be made. I've always found that's the best way to get things balanced out.
Yeah. And don't be surprised if you have to raise your levels slightly
Mhm.
for solos when you have a full stadium,
Right.
because physics takes place, sound gets absorbed by audience members before it gets to the box. It does make a difference. So that's why it's so important to have somebody up there.
Yeah, tough
Well,
thing to deal with. It really is. It's a tough thing to wrap your brain about or brain around and make sure that you're getting it all done. Tough to do.
absolutely. Well, thanks everybody for being here with us on Monday morning or actually Tuesday morning for Coffee Talk, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks, everybody.